Am I the a-hole for telling my mother-in-law I don't care about her feelings when it comes to how my kids are treated by their cousins? My husband is my mother-in-law's child from her second marriage. She has 2 older children from her first marriage, and the 2 kids from the first marriage never accepted my husband. Now, according to my husband, as kids, they weren't inherently mean to him, just very distant and disinterested in a relationship with him. But they became more unkind to him as they all got older, and my husband tried to bridge the gap. At the time, his mom was very active in trying to stop that behavior and get the kids to accept my husband as their brother. My husband said she spent a long time trying to make things work, but they didn't. When my husband was 17, his sister got married and there was a big fight at his house between his mom and older siblings, where they said nothing she ever did made them love him, and they had no interest in having him as a brother. That they were fine when they were younger because they could ignore him a lot easier, but they never ever cared for him and would have been happy had he never been born. Despite this, my husband has tried to at least keep a civil relationship with them. It has on a few occasions seen their kids at family functions. We put a stop to contact completely though, when his brother's youngest, 7, spat at our 4-year-old during my husband's grandparents' anniversary barbecue in May. This was not the first time their kids had been mean to mine, but it was the first time they straight up defended the child's action in front of everyone as it not mattering, because in their family, our kids did not matter a single bit. Mother-in-law was outraged, as were the rest of the people there, including the grandparents. But mother-in-law still expected us to try and promote a cousin relationship between our kids and my husband's siblings' kids. My husband told her he wanted to protect our kids from the rejection, and was done. She tried appealing to me as a mother, and how hurt her feelings were that her grandkids would grow on opposite side of a feud, which didn't work because as I told her that when it came to my children and how they are being treated, her feelings are nowhere near the priority list. I told her I understood it must be hard to have this happen with people you love, but she has got to accept that the family from her second marriage don't deserve to be punished for being part of the wrong marriage. She tried to dispute that, but it's true. Her kids never liked that she remarried after her divorce. And anyone born from or brought in from that remarriage is never going to be worthy or a real person in their eyes. They will always be an unwanted nuisance because of that. So it's time to cut the cord and remove that kind of energy from our lives. She's pissed that I dismissed her feelings in the way I did it, but my husband thanked me for having his back, and has been hearing from his mom that I'm an a-hole, which he told her wasn't true, and that she should listen to me. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. This is not like they got in a little pushing match at the barbecue. The kid spat in your kid's face. Kids don't naturally do that. He was encouraged to do that. His parents have taught him at a young age to hate his cousin, and that's sad. You're just protecting your kids. Also, was the second marriage the result of an affair? This type of hurt and hate isn't normal. The second marriage wasn't, no. From what I know, the first marriage ended because mother-in-law thought she could change her first husband, and anyone who knew them back then knew she was crazy and it would end badly, which it did. Not the a-hole. If your husband's half-siblings are so resentful, literally decades later, that their parents are no longer together, that they're encouraging their kids to take it out on a 4-year-old, there's something wrong with them. I can't even imagine an adult being that petty about something that happened, like, 25 years ago? The divorce was actually 30-ish years ago now. It confuses the hell out of me that they wouldn't take a step back and decide not to come when they hate my husband and our kids so much. Not an a-hole. His older siblings are a-holes, and while I don't think the mother-in-law is one and understand her wanting her grandchildren to get along as a family, it just won't happen anytime soon. And it's quite clear her eldest children have no interest in their brother's side of the family, so screw them. I only really found out as an adult that on my dad's side, we were never really accepted, because his mom hated my mom because she was his second partner to have kids. And my grandmother's eyes, only my 2 eldest brothers from my dad's first partner were her grandchildren. We never really saw that side of the family, so it never really came up. Just figured dad didn't get along with them or they lived further away. My brother's partner added one of our cousins on Facebook from my dad's side. She was adding all the extended family basically, wanting to basically be part of the family. And was point blank told by her that she doesn't care about her, because my brother and I aren't really part of the family, and only our oldest brothers are her real cousins, or something along those lines. So that's stuff that has basically been ingrained in my cousins' heads through their entire lives, and I don't see it ever changing. It's toxic, and best to just cut them out. I don't think it'll ever happen. I see this just passing through the generations for a long time to come. The level of disdain they have for my husband and children is shocking, given the reason. Like, I have heard of people having no interest in their half-siblings or step-siblings, or even resenting/disliking them. But to the level of hatred they show for innocent children goes beyond anything I have seen before. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not returning my rings to my dead husband's family? Danielle and I were married for 1.5 years, together for 7. I received an engagement ring, wedding ring, and eternity band from him as a wedding anniversary gift for 1 year married. Danielle died in an accident, not sharing what due to privacy, at the beginning of the year, and my heart was broken. It still doesn't feel real, but I'm trying to live life the way he'd want me to every day. I haven't had much contact with his family since the funeral 6 months ago. I suppose we were all hurting and need to heal. Then yesterday, my ex-sister-in-law messaged me on Facebook. I'm a bit of an overshare on Facebook, and they knew about my eternity ring as well as the other rings. My sister-in-law wants me to return all the rings to them, as they say that Daniel paid for them, and because he has died, they belong to the family. And my mother-in-law also told me to do this too. I've already given them back his childhood stuff he had, along with photos he had before I met him. But the rings are deeply sentimental to me. I'd be okay with giving them a plain wedding band, but the 2 others are beautiful, expensive, $19,000 combined, and remind me of the best time of my life. I'd give them my husband's wedding ring, but he was buried wearing it. Now I'm getting squeezed by his family to give them these rings, and I don't know if they just want them to sell or own or what. Sister-in-law even said she will look into law if I don't give them back, and that I'm an a-hole for keeping them out of the family where they belong. Daniel and I didn't have kids, so I suppose I'm no longer family. Am I the a-hole if I don't give the rings to my in-laws? Now for the top comments. Not an a-hole. Asking for a widow's wedding ring 6 months after losing her husband is deeply messed up. I'd cut all ties with these people. Let your a-hole sister-in-law get a lawyer. It will be a waste of her money because those rings are yours. They were gifts. These people are disgusting. They aren't family heirlooms. They're just nice things they want to be able to pawn. Block all of them. Actually, I'd go ahead and hire a lawyer to send them a cease and desist letter for the harassment. The ex-in-laws have zero claim to these rings. They wouldn't have a claim even if they were heirlooms. The cruelty to a recent widow is astounding. I'd also go ahead and overshare this harassment on Facebook. Make sure you tag them as well. Not an a-hole. What? Yeah, he paid for them. As gifts for you. But as you were his spouse, his assets go to you anyway, unless he had a will that states otherwise. Where the hell are these people getting the idea they have any claim over anything of his, much less something as sentimental as wedding and engagement rings? Not an a-hole. And as for the legal threats, they can try, but they don't have a leg to stand on. They're not even his. They're hers. So awful. Honestly, your husband is gone. As sad as it is, cut ties with his family. That's so toxic. You were his wife, meaning his things now belong to you anyway. They were gifts. I hope you can get through this. It must be awful, but keep those rings as memories. Not an a-hole. I'm highly considering it. It is so strange, as this nastiness only happened after he passed. They were great in-laws besides that, but this is starting to bother me. Do not give them your rings. You may be feeling pressured now, but you'll regret doing so the rest of your life. These people are grieving, but that's no excuse for this behavior. Stand your ground. If they threaten you with legal action again, tell them you'll file a restraining order for harassment. This is not what your husband would have wanted. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for prioritizing a baby blanket for my sister's baby over my sister-in-law's? So here's the deal. My sister found out she was pregnant back in November. It was a huge surprise, but such a good one. My sister was diagnosed with PCOS and endo when she was in high school, and her fertility was badly affected. She and her husband were trying for 6 years with no success. And then, surprise! She asked if I would make the baby a blanket because I started getting into making baby clothes and blankets at the start of the pandemic, and she wanted something from me for her baby. She offered to pay me, but I said it was a gift. And I started working on it with all my spare time because I'm still learning and growing. And when we found out my sister was having more complications and this would be her one and only, I decided to pour even more into it, making sure it's perfect for my nephew when he arrives. Now that they have a name, I can even start working on the name when I've finished the actual blanket. About 6 weeks after my sister told me she was pregnant, I found out my husband's sister is also expecting. Around 3 months into her pregnancy, she shared that she and her husband were struggling with money and asked if I could make her a blanket. I was honest that I couldn't guarantee I would have one ready for when baby is born, but I would get to work on one as soon as I could, and was clear it would be a few months. She asked why, and I explained I had already committed to making one for my sister, and was still so new I was taking my time and wanted to make sure it was perfect. My answer seemed to be okay with her, but then when she found out that I was true to my word and hadn't started in the new year, she was upset. It's been a thing a lot more lately because she keeps wanting a blanket to be ready and asking me about it. She told her family she was hurt that I was prioritizing my sister's over hers, and that she felt both should get the same time and attention. I feel bad because she and her husband are struggling more now. Long story, but one of their kids has some medical issues and they've had some house issues. But she has her family, and everyone is pitching in to help, and even my husband and I have given them money to help them out. My sister just has me, and our husbands, of course. But we come from parents who don't care, and she was always the big sister who was there for me, doing stuff for me. So I want to do this for her and for my nephew. And yet, I feel bad because my sister-in-law has told me I'm hurting her by prioritizing one over the other. She called me Nahal the other day for prioritizing my nephew over my niece, which is how she sees it, and it's making me feel all the worse. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Your sister-in-law is just entitled. I was thinking the same thing. She was working on her sister's first, so why should she have to drop working on her nephew's blanket, who would be their only child, just to start the sister-in-law so it would be ready in time for her baby to be born? I'm really curious as to why she thinks her baby, which won't be blood-related to Opie and she already has a child Opie didn't make a blanket for, is more important than her sister's child, who will be her only child. It is a very generous gift Opie has agreed to. It is not needed before baby gets home. Baby can't even sleep unsupervised with a blanket, so it's not like a get this done or my baby will be cold thing. And yes, sister-in-law, Opie is prioritizing her actual sister over you. Get a grip. Not a-hole. You were already working on sister's blanket first anyways. It's common sense that you would start your sister-in-law's either later or after you finished your sister's blanket. Right. If she had been working on sister-in-law's blanket first and dropped it for her sister's blanket, I could understand her being hurt. Even then, stirring up drama wouldn't be okay, but feeling hurt would be natural. In this case, however, it's just entitlement. And I've made blankets that have taken me someone's entire pregnancy to finish. So if someone else comes up pregnant while I'm making the blanket, they'll get a hat and maybe some matching booties. I can finish that in a couple days. Not an a-hole. Of course your sister is more important to you. Your sister-in-law is an entitled a-hole. Your sister asked first, and she's your sister. Keep going with your plan as you originally decided. You're not in the wrong. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to change my last name like my siblings? It's me, 16 male, and my 3 other siblings. Jordan, 19 male, my twin brother Louis, 16 male, and my sister Bella, 14 female. Our parents got divorced 4 years ago. My dad was cheating on my mom. He came out and told her, so they split. We were all mad at my dad for a while, especially me because we were always close, so it hurt knowing he did this. We didn't talk for a year as he said he'd give me space till I was ready. Then after that, we started talking again. He only had us few days out of the week, but that changed a while back. My brother and my sister decided they didn't want to go with him at all, so they're at mom's full time and he only sees them every other weekend. I'm the only one that wanted to get split custody, so like 1 week with him then 1 week mom, which they were all mad at. They still hate my dad for cheating, I get it, because to me I haven't looked at him the same, but not mad anymore because it happened already years ago. After they broke up, my mom started going out with my stepdad, Martin. They got married last year right before lockdown, but he was already living with us a long time. We don't talk much, but he's chill. They do more stuff with him than I do, but because they have more time than me, and they like him a lot. I do too. Before Father's Day, my siblings and my mom came to me about a surprise they wanted to do for Martin. And the surprise was all of us changing our last names to his. Everyone. But I said no, and said I like having my last name. They can do it obviously, but I'm not interested. That got everyone mad, especially my mom. She talks a lot of crap about my dad all the time, so she asked me why I still want to have a last name of a piece of turd. I told her he's still my dad. He cheated, but he still always tried to be a good dad, so I don't hold that against him anymore. We have these fights all the time whenever I'm going to his house, so I just got tired and ignored them. But they bugged me a lot about doing the change with them because it would mean a lot to Martin if we all did it. I wasn't even there for Father's Day. I went to my dad's, and they're mad I ruined it since they wanted it to be an everyone thing, and I'm the only one not changing my last name now. I don't know why they think I'm being an a-hole for not wanting to change my last name just because of what my dad did a long time ago already. It is not like I consider Martin my dad. But they acting like I am, so am I? Not an a-hole. Your dad might have cheated, but your mother is the a-hole for getting her kids in the middle of all of this. It's parental alienation. Yes, 100%. What Opie's mother is doing is emotional mistreatment. I hardly have a relationship with either of my parents due to alienation, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I'm sorry, Opie. I hope you have access to therapy. Not an a-hole. Not an a-hole. While your dad was a bad husband to your mom, you consider him to be a good father to you. If you want to keep his last name, that's perfectly fine. Even if your dad was terrible to you, if you don't want to change your last name, you don't have to. Yeah, like I know what he did was messed up, and took me a while to stop being mad at him for what he did. But at the end of the day, he's still a good dad. Not an a-hole. What will happen when Martin disappoints them or his relationship with your mom sours? What if Martin cheats on her in the future? I have a relative who was like this with their very blended family, basically pressing the kids to all change their last names till every single one of them did, even though everyone's other bio parent was still alive. I always thought it was not healthy. It isn't healthy. It's commonly done by people who try to raise the other parents. It's a toxic behavior often done by people who have a strange need for a partner.
Am I the a-hole for telling my parents I'm not a band-aid for their grief and they can't slot me into the wanted place just because their favorite child is dead at my sister's funeral? My 16-year-old sister died a month ago. We weren't close because of our parents and how they favored her and turned her into someone unlikable. My maternal grandparents, who took me in a year ago because my parents were straight up ignoring my existence at that point, told me I, 18 male, had to go to the funeral. 1. Because she's my sister, and 2. Because I needed to support my parents in their grief. I went reluctantly and mostly out of respect for my grandparents because they did take me in and got me away from my parents' house. When we got there, my parents were acting so different toward me. They had stopped paying any attention to me when I was 7 or 8 years old, and a year ago they told me they were disgusted by me and ashamed to call me their son because I wouldn't give my sister the love and attention she deserved. So, the attention from them was not pleasant and had been completely unexpected. There was a mini fight before the service because I refused to sit with them. My grandparents attempted to push me into it, but I ignored them. Once the service was over, my parents were trying to cling to me and hug me, and I haven't been hugged by them in 10 or more years. It frustrated me, and I told them to stop and try to shake them off. My grandparents were telling me to calm down, and my parents said they needed me and that we all needed to grieve my sister together. I told them I wasn't a band-aid for their grief now that she's gone, and I said they didn't get to slot me into the wanted child place just because their favorite child is gone. I told them I never should have come and that I didn't want their fake BS. My grandparents lost it with me and kicked me out for saying what I did. My paternal grandparents, who live in another state, offered to let me move in with them, so I made my way to them. I hadn't graduated yet, but that got messed up in the process, so I'm not finishing high school like I was supposed to. But I did get closer to grandparents who not only saw how badly I had been treated before, but spoke up and were pushed out for saying anything to my parents. There have been lots of calls and texts from my maternal grandparents, so I had to block them like I had my parents when I first moved in with them. But they want me to be ashamed of my words at the funeral, and want me to apologize and make peace and forgive my parents, and make up for my evil ways, their way to describe it, at the funeral. My paternal grandparents said my maternal ones always coddled and babied my mom, and it was no surprise they do it even now. But am I the a-hole for what I said? Now for the top comments. The one thing that makes you the a-hole, in my opinion, is that you blame the lack of closeness with your sister on your parents' favoritism. That wasn't her fault, and maybe as a very young child, it is understandable that you would blame and resent her. But as you got older, you should have been able to separate your feelings about her and your feelings about your parents. The favoritism made her someone unlikable, not that I didn't like her, because she was the favorite. She was spoiled and not easy to be around. And I wasn't going to excuse that when I had to deal with her attitude at the time. Not the a-hole. Shame on him. And your maternal grandparents are horrible. They should have respected your no. Contact your high school and explain what happened and ask if there is a way for you to finish. Maybe online or at a local school. I bet they'd be willing to work with you. They weren't willing to work with us when we did try to figure something out. But my grandparents want to try to make something work before I give up and get my GED. Although I'm not really motivated to get that. I'd prefer to go do something instead of that, but I'll need a GED if not my diploma to get anywhere. Have your old school and your new school talk. You may be able to get your remaining credits in summer school, although it's only April, so you might be able to finish the school year and graduate on time. Depends on your transcript, I expect. Don't let it go. You also might be able to go ahead and take the GED. Don't waste time on that though, because the longer you're out of school, the less you'll remember the info they test. There should be GED classes that are free. When I did mine, as long as I took the classes, then they gave me a credit for the price of the test, so everything was free. There was also a life skills program for anyone under 21 that got them a diploma. Luckily, these were all free programs. Please use these resources. They will help you, and everyone I came into contact with during my experience wanted me to succeed. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife not to come to my ex-wife's funeral to support my daughter because my daughter doesn't want her there? My ex-wife died a couple of days ago. We shared a daughter, 14, together. Our divorce was not on the best of terms. We were both at fault. Nobody cheated, but we weren't the best spouses to each other. For a long time, we both tried to put our daughter first. But after I remarried, things did change. My ex alienated our daughter against my wife. I did what I could to stop it, and I made sure I tried to counteract what my ex was doing. I did fight my ex in court over it, but my ex did successfully alienate our daughter against my wife. This was 4 years ago. My wife was pregnant at the time, so it was stressful when we realized what was happening, and my wife and daughter do not have a close or healthy relationship. My daughter shuts my wife out because of what her mom has said. She has at times been rude to my wife, and I have stepped in to tell her she cannot behave that way. I told her I can't make her like, love, or be close to my wife, but she must be respectful. The rudeness was never a big problem, but the rejection of a relationship has remained consistent. Now my ex-wife is dead, and my daughter is grieving. My daughter has stated clearly that she does not want my wife or my son, 3.5, there. My wife wants to go to the funeral. She said my daughter will always remember her not being there for her and keeping her brother away from supporting her if we listen. She said that, at the very least, she must be there. That maybe our son is too young, but as her stepmom, if she doesn't show up and show she loves her, things will never get better. My daughter screamed at the top of her lungs yesterday because she heard my wife say she wants to come and support her. My daughter stated, very aggressively and in a state of raw grief, that my wife will not be a comfort because she hated her mom and nobody wants her there. I told my wife not to come. I said I will be there. And I know my daughter has mixed feelings about me being there, but she ultimately wants me there. My wife expressed that she was worried it was a big risk and that my daughter would remember it as her not being supportive later. I said potentially it could, but it could also show my daughter that she's willing to respect her boundaries, that she's not trying to take her mom's place. I told my wife it will be more difficult now because my daughter's mom is dead, and it can be hard to see the flaws in people's actions when we lose them too soon. I feel deep down that if she shows up, my daughter will turn against her even more. My daughter sought the advice of the family therapist we have visited over the years, and the therapist agreed with me. But my wife was upset. She told me she wanted my support and that she felt like I was encouraging her not to be a good stepmom. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your daughter made her choice clear. You and your wife need to respect that. If the therapist supports that, then there's nothing further to discuss. I say this as a stepmom whose stepson's biomom passed away. Not the a-hole. Your decision to respect her wishes shows consideration for her emotional state. Exactly. This moment isn't about being a good stepmom. It's about honoring a grieving child's boundaries. Respect now can pave the way for healing later. Anything else risks permanent damage. Why does your current wife want to be there in the first place? It's a room full of the ex's friends and family grieving. I wouldn't want her there either. What the ex said is irrelevant. Daughter doesn't want current wife to go. Respect that or damage your relationship with her. She wants to go so she can show visible support to my daughter, so my daughter knows she is always there. But I feel like it won't be viewed that way by my daughter even if that's my wife's intention. I guarantee your daughter isn't going to see it your wife's way. It's going to damage the relationship if you force this upon your daughter. Which is why I told my wife not to come. I know my daughter won't see it the same way my wife does. Next story. Am I the a-hole for calling my husband a disgrace after he said my miscarriage ruined his birthday? I miscarried yesterday afternoon around 12 p.m. I've never had a miscarriage before, and this baby was so wished for. So it's all so fresh and I'm sobbing right now. So I apologize in advance if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. My husband turned 27 yesterday. I, 26 female, was pregnant with mine and my husband's second child. Yesterday, I was 8 weeks pregnant. The day before yesterday, we saw a beautiful heartbeat flickering on the screen, and today I'm devastated. I was playing with our 2-year-old when I felt a pressure in my lower abdomen. Not long after, I noticed bleeding, and I let my husband know immediately that I had discomfort and bleeding. Before long, I had passed what I believe was the fetus, and I messaged him, "I think I lost the baby." I wanted to keep him updated, and I guess I was seeking some kind of emotional support. I asked if he could come home, and he said, "Of course, if it's urgent." I said I think it is because the pain and bleeding were getting worse. I was starting to feel lightheaded, and our 2-year-old was unattended in his playroom at the time. We have no friends or family nearby that I could call who would get to us quicker than he could. I had to clean myself up, crawl downstairs to take paracetamol, make my son his lunch, and then put him down for a nap. At this point, my husband still wasn't home. He was working approximately 30 minutes away and took closer to 60 minutes to get back. Hours later, when I asked, it was because he'd stopped at Tesco to pick up some beers. I ended up very unwell, losing lots of blood, lightheaded, vomiting, etc., and he had to take me to A&E. By the time I was discharged, it was almost 8 p.m. Last week, I had said I'd make him his favorite dinner for his birthday, which he reminded me of when we were almost home. I said I wasn't feeling up to it, and that whatever takeaway he wanted was on me. He said for Pete's sake under his breath, and then muttered something along the lines of, "This BS has ruined my birthday." He didn't stop to get any takeaway. He just drove straight home. He put our son to bed, and I went to bed, and I'm not sure what he did after. I didn't see him this morning as he had already left for work. He hasn't messaged me all day, and he got home a few hours ago. It's now 8:40 p.m., and he's been giving me the silent treatment. I tried to speak to him about an hour or so ago, and he ignored me, so I called him a disgrace. He slammed the bedroom door and locked me out of the bedroom. His mom has since messaged me and said I need to be patient as he's also had a loss. She didn't ask how I was or anything. He's obviously speaking to his mom, but why isn't he opening up and speaking to me? She said I was harsh. I'm feeling utterly emotionally neglected right now. My body has been through emotional and physical hell. I understand that my miscarriage came at a freaking inconvenient time for him, as it was his birthday and all. I'm not sure if it's the hormones making me feel crazy, but is it nuts to contemplate divorce? Am I the a-hole for calling him a disgrace? Now for the top comments. If it were me, I would leave him over this. Some things you don't come back from, and getting mad at your wife for ruining your birthday because she miscarried and ended up in emergency is on that list. I'd be so repulsed by his selfishness and callousness that the thought of ever touching him again would make me vomit. Not the a-hole, and I can't imagine spending another minute under the same roof as this horrible, immature, cruel man. Yes, the miscarriage of a wanted pregnancy can be a huge loss for a man too, but that doesn't give him the right to be so selfish and treat you so cruelly. Your husband has showed a side of himself he can never hide again. Ask yourself if this is the kind of man you want in your life going forward. I'm so sorry for your loss. Last story. Am I the a-hole for asking my mom's husband to stop calling me his sole daughter and telling him my dad was meant to be my dad, not him? My dad died when I, 16 female, was 6. 2 years later, my mom met Jeremy, and the two of them fell hard and fast for each other. They've become very spiritual together, and they talk about how they were always meant to be together and find each other, how their hearts are one, and how they're each other's true love and soulmate. My mom has said Jeremy was always supposed to be her happily ever after. Jeremy feels the same about mom, but he doesn't just see mom that way. He sees me as his sole daughter, and he calls me that frequently. He said he knows it's crazy, but he feels as though he was always meant to be my dad. He talks about how Mother Earth gave him not only a wife but a child as well, and how he's so glad the universe saw him worthy to be a dad. It has always bothered me. I know they're happy. I know my mom sees my dad as nothing more than a stepping stone to Jeremy, as a way for the two of them to raise a child together. But I have never seen it that way, and I have never been close to Jeremy, which is something that has upset them, especially when I push Jeremy out of parenting stuff, because I do that all the time. If I'm asked to speak to my parents about something, I always make a point of telling mom I need to talk to her. And while she and Jeremy try to insist I should talk to them both, I don't allow it. That's when Jeremy and my mom really focus on the meant to be part of everything, and it makes me so uncomfortable. But in the past, when I expressed that, they weren't paying enough attention to really hear me. Usually, they're so caught up in these beliefs. I was 12 when they got married officially, but they called each other husband and wife before then. The wedding was a mess, and I know that's when they started thinking about all of us needing therapy, because they felt their day was ruined by my refusal to participate in the wedding. They had this whole thing planned, where they were going to use Earth to express their love for each other and then plant a family garden where we each plant ourselves into that Earth and express how we were a soul family or whatever they were talking about. I didn't plant a thing, and I said nothing. It did hurt my mom, but it hurt Jeremy more, and she told me that. She said he believed so strongly that I was meant to be his daughter, and my outright rejection was difficult when he knew I loved her at least. We officially started therapy a month ago. It was a long time coming, but they wanted to find a spiritual, nature-based therapist who understood their beliefs. They and the therapist spent the first session talking about the beliefs they share. Then it moved on to the problems they have with me, not embracing Jeremy or the family we have. In our second to last session, I got to speak, and I said exactly how much I hate Jeremy calling me his sole daughter and saying we were meant to be father and daughter. I said how much it sucks to realize mom only sees my dad as a stepping stone to her true love, without any consideration for me, the child she had with my dad. And I hammered home the point that I am dad's daughter. He was, and always will be my dad, not Jeremy. that they can wish it away all they like, but it won't work. And I won't forget Dad or act like he was some discardable part of the story they want to tell. The therapist asked me what it would take for me to accept Jeremy, and I said I won't ever accept him like they want. But if he'd like to be someone I care for someday, then he needs to stop calling me his sole daughter, and he needs to accept that I was meant to be Dad's daughter, not his, and stop saying otherwise. The last session we had was them talking about how they felt about what I said. And basically, Mom said I was crapping on their beliefs, and Jeremy said he feels so hurt that I won't embrace the sole daughter stuff, and look at it as a good thing. He said he's never had someone twist loving actions to make them negative like I did. Then the therapist asked me if that's what I wanted. I said I wanted them to finally understand how I feel and to listen to what I have been saying for years. I said if that hurts their feelings, then I could live with it. All three told me I had chosen to speak in a very hateful way and that I didn't need to disrespect their beliefs like I did. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Isn't mutual agreement a fundamental concept in soulmates or soul daughters? Otherwise, there is little to differentiate it from an unhinged stalker. If Jeremy is so confident in his beliefs, then why can't he just keep them to himself? Otherwise, it reads like desperately overcompensating an insecurity. Apparently not. Or at least you can have one person not know and reject reality for different reasons. According to my mom, her husband, and the therapist anyway. Is this a licensed therapist? No, at least not from what I can tell. Sorry for you, not the a-hole. You got through the last 10 years. 2 more. Not even 2 years. Start planning now. When kids are in their 17th year with all their stuff together, important papers and sentimental items, bank account at a place parents don't bank, part-time job, decent grades, college or trade school plan, and they up sticks and live at a friend or relative's house, the parents can't do a damn thing. Sure, they can go to the police, who, if they check it out at all, will shrug and say bottom of the case pile. They can go to the courts, and by the time a date is scheduled months later, listen to a judge laugh or scold them for wasting official time on an 18-year-old or very near to. Update. Am I the a-hole for financially screwing over my sister after finding out she's close with my ex and his wife? For the first part of this story, click the link in the description. This will be my first and only update. So I spoke to my sister again. She apologized for reacting that way the last time, also for keeping it from me all these years. She said she didn't tell me because she knew I would ask her to choose, and she didn't want to be in that position. She said she never wanted to hurt me, but at the same time, she couldn't bring herself to walk away from the people who had been there for her. She said it never felt fair to cut him off completely. Growing up, our parents were barely around. They were always busy with work, and for a long time, it was just me and my ex who were actually present in her life. He was like family to her. Then she brought up the accident she was in around 5 years ago. I knew about it, of course. She had multiple fractures, hematomas, and internal bruising. She was in the hospital for a while and bedridden for weeks. I always assumed our parents were taking care of her. I never asked, and I never really checked in. I was too busy trying to manage a recent divorce, a small child, a career, and whatever was left of my mental health. She said it was my ex's wife who stepped up. She took her to every appointment, picked up prescriptions, brought food, helped her move around, stayed with her when she couldn't be alone. And at one point she said, I know it hurts you, but she was there. He was there. You weren't. You didn't even come to the hospital. I thought I was gonna die and you didn't even show up. She cried while telling me all this. She said she still wants a relationship with me, but she's not going to cut them off. She also said she's fine with me not helping her with the loans anymore. She's planning to get a part-time job and figure it out herself. She told my ex and his wife about our conversation. Apparently, they offered to help her financially, but she turned it down too. I just listened. Then I told her she's free to do whatever she wants, and so am I, and to never call me again. So that's where we are. Haha, you didn't even ask if your sister was dead? With family like you, who needs enemies? I had a 5-year-old, a full-time job, and a brain that was barely holding it together. I texted her, but no, I didn't go to the hospital. I assumed our parents were taking care of her. I was wrong. I'm not defending it. Nothing in her explanation excuses or addresses why she would befriend the woman your ex cheated with before her accident. She said they weren't friends before the accident. She was cordial to her. They only became close after the accident. You still weren't the a-hole though, in case you wondered. Exactly. Sister wanted to find a way to excuse her betrayal by putting it on OP. This woman must take great pleasure in luring a husband and sister away from OP, getting them both to deceive her, whose family she helped destroy. So you were left cleaning up the mess that your ex and his hoe created. She steals him, then comes for your sister? Nah, this was a calculated move on the side piece's part. I'm glad you cut your sister off, and shame on your ex and affair partner. They know what they're doing. Hope your sister thinks it's worth it. Absolutely agree with you. This wasn't some random coincidence. It was calculated and messy from the start. Cutting off your sister was the right call. Anyone who disrespects you like that doesn't deserve a seat at your table. Let them enjoy the chaos they created. You did the right thing. Next story. Am I the a-hole for only wanting a relationship with my grandson and not his half-sister? I, 55 female, lost my daughter Amy to an accident 2 years ago. Amy was married to Daniel, and they had my grandson Kai together, who is now 8. Daniel met his current partner a year after Amy died, and they welcomed a baby in May of this year. Ever since the birth of his daughter, Daniel has had an issue with us wanting time with just Kai. Daniel was upset when we didn't go to his and his partner's baby shower. He was upset we bought nothing for his baby, and he was even more upset when we didn't come to the hospital to meet his baby. We were taking care of Kai while Daniel's partner was giving birth, and Kai wasn't even allowed per the rules of the hospital. Daniel still expected us to take turns visiting his child, who he called our newest grandchild. My husband and Daniel had a conversation about that title and the expectation that his new child was our grandchild. He told my husband he didn't see why Kai should be the only kid to get grandparents, and he said we only had one child and one grandchild, so we should be happy to have even more grandchildren from him and his partner. My husband told Daniel we would be nice to his daughter when we saw her, but Kai was still our only grandchild. Daniel threatened to stop us from seeing Kai afterward, and then he did some research and learned we would have a case for grandparents' visitation if he did this. So he has been attempting to force his partner and daughter into our lives more regularly, in an attempt to make us treat them like a daughter or daughter-in-law and granddaughter. Last week, Kai told me he misses spending time at our house and having sleepovers. Even before Amy died, we would have him overnight, etc. Now it's Daniel's whole family when we see Kai, and he attempts to make us focus only on Daniel's daughter. I asked Daniel to consider a sleepover for Kai soon, and he asked me why I wasn't making the offer for his daughter. I told him Kai is my grandson, and I care very much about maintaining a good relationship with him. Daniel asked me if I only wanted a relationship with Kai and not his daughter. I said yes. I told Daniel that he needs to understand that Kai is Amy's, and she was our only child, and we already lost her. He told me it wasn't fair, and he released a lot of frustration, which I sat and listened to. Then he told me, fine, I won. Kai wants to be with us without the rest of them anyway, so we win. He then told me he hoped I could live with myself when his daughter and any future children felt like crap, because they weren't good enough in our eyes to be our grandchildren too. I felt he was unfair, but he made himself perfectly clear that he felt my husband and I were not good people. He did bring Kai for a sleepover all weekend, which Kai loved, and he spent the day at our house yesterday too. But again, Daniel let it be known he felt my husband and I were not good people. Am I the a-hole? I have a half-sister, but the only grandparents we share are on our father's side. She doesn't have a relationship with my mother or my mother's side of the family, and while I have a relationship with her mother, since her mother is my stepmother, I don't have one with my stepmother's relatives. And that's perfectly fine with everyone involved. I'm not biologically related to them, so I'm not their responsibility. It's all about personal relationships. People connect differently, and it's okay to have boundaries, especially after such a profound loss. Exactly, and relationships that happen organically and aren't forced are the ones that thrive. Not the a-hole. Does his new baby not have other grandparents? Even if it doesn't, that's not your responsibility. Your grandson may have extra grandparents, but he has lost his only mummy. No other grandparents involved, but she does have an aunt. Well, there's your answer. They want all the things grandparents provide. Babysitting, free stuff, babysitting, babysitting. Did I mention babysitting? And yeah, to a degree I get it. Not having really any outside help and 2 kids, that's a lot. But also, any potential chance he did want to develop that type of relationship with you guys has been dashed by him trying to demand and force it. Doesn't work like that. Set up a trust for Kai and make sure you document everything. Daniel probably wants you to pay for his daughter's college too, etc. Or house down payments for all of them. You are right, and the new wife should be delighted she has the help with her stepson. Just stick to your own sense of things, which is correct. Polite but don't budge. Not the a-hole. We did this already. Anything Amy would have gotten will now go to Kai, and we're making sure to protect it, so it will only be Kai's and not anyone else's. Please make sure an attorney has it set up, so it can't be used to purchase a new larger home for the entire family, under the guise it is housing Kai. I know someone who had this happen. It will be 100% secure, and Daniel will never be in charge of it or have access to it. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my half-siblings I will never regret choosing to live with my grandparents over them and their mom? I, 33 male, lost both of my parents by the time I was 10. My mom when I was 5 and my dad when I was 9. My dad had remarried and had a kid with his wife, and they had another on the way when he died. My grandparents and my dad's widow fought for custody of me, and because I wanted to be with my grandparents, they won the custody battle. I didn't spend a lot of time with my half-siblings back then, and I resisted playing happy families with them and their mom. She wanted me with them and felt like I belonged with them, but I felt like I belonged with my real family, and luckily that's where I was. For years, I had no contact with my half-siblings at all. This all changed 3 years ago when they reached out and said they wanted to know me and have me in their lives. We talk once a month and DM a little in between. They want the relationship with me more than I do. But even more than that, they have expressed on a number of occasions that they feel like the courts made the wrong decision and that my choice was wrong. They keep looking for me to regret the choice, and they have mentioned several times that their mom has longed for a relationship with me and misses me. A few times, they called their mom my mom. I corrected them and always made it clear I never considered her my mom. They never understood this and questioned me on it, and I always answered. Last time we talked, they told me they need to hear me say I regret choosing to live with my grandparents over them and their mom. They said it's something that haunted their family for years, and they need to know if I could go back, I'd make a different decision. I told them that would be a lie, and I have never regretted it. I told them being raised by my family was better than being raised by the woman my dad married. I said I never thought of her as a parent or as my family. They asked me how I could get to my age and have kids. I have 3, and still feel that way. They told me being raised by a parent would have been better than being raised by grandparents. I said if I had a parent, then yes, but I didn't. Both my parents are gone, and their mom was never one of mine. Then they had me confirm my lack of regret, and they said I was freaking cold and should have a heart, considering their mom fought so hard for me and loved me as her own. I refused to apologize, and they were more than happy to talk at me for hours about how awful I am. Instead of listening, I ended the call. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. They're mad you didn't trauma bond with their mom just because she wanted to be your mom. You were a grieving kid, not a consolation prize. Choosing your grandparents wasn't cold, it was choosing love and stability. They need therapy, not your regret. And in all honesty, they would not have had a very good life if I had lived there. I'd have been so bitter to be raised by her. Maybe she would have eventually put me in foster care when she realized I didn't want to be with her. So we have no idea if the fantasy would become reality. Not the a-hole. As you said, she is not your parent, and there was no reason for you to want to live with them when you had loving grandparents willing to raise you. You have a right to your feelings and them to theirs. However, trying to pressure you to express regret on something you obviously don't, it's a bit manipulative and entitled, and it is weird they keep insisting on it. They likely grew up hearing their mom talk about the custody battle, the fact she saw me as her son, and how much it hurt her to have me leave. So I can understand it to a point, but the fact I have not desired a relationship with their mom now should tell them where I stand on this today. Still, they are adults now and should respect your feelings, not understand because they are obviously not in your shoes and cannot know what you've been through with losing both your parents so young. However, they are old enough to understand life is not simple, and choices you might think are good for someone, in that someone's eyes they are not. So they are angry because their fantasy and your reality don't match. Yes, and really, it is a fantasy. They have no idea how it would have turned out if she had won. Last story. Am I the a-hole for letting daycare call CPS when my soon-to-be ex-husband failed to pick up our toddler from daycare? We're in a trial separation. He wants half custody. It's been several months, and it was the 8th time daycare has called me because he was unable to pick up our toddler. Sometimes he was just a no-show, and the daycare would call me because it had already been half an hour since their official close time. Every time the daycare is mad at me for making them stay overtime, and we're charged $2 per minute for being late. They threaten to call authorities and CPS if we keep doing this. I tried to explain the problem, but daycare doesn't care, as they shouldn't. Well, last week it happened again, and I told daycare to go ahead and call the authorities and CPS. My soon-to-be ex-husband showed up an hour late and met our toddler there with the cops. Daycare also threatened to kick our toddler out. Again, understandably so. My soon-to-be ex-husband was so mad and said I was a cruel mother for abandoning our toddler. I told him I warned him multiple times in the past, and issues only arise when he has custody. We switch each week, trialing house swap too. I told him repeatedly that if he cannot get out of work reliably, he needs to hire a babysitter or nanny, and he cannot rely on me as his primary backup. I'd get it if it was like once or twice a year, or if babysitter or nanny plans fell through. But if I'm his ex-wife and he has custody, he shouldn't depend on me as his primary backup. And I also felt bad about leaving our toddler. But if we separated, this would only keep happening, and I felt short-term pain might be worth the long-term gain. I feel bad our toddler is caught in the middle, but was I the a-hole for letting daycare call CPS? Relevant details. We both have high-paying jobs, but I intentionally do not schedule myself to work late on days I have him, or I have a nanny and babysitter ready. Now with a trial separation, I have cut down to half-time. I work half days on the days I have our toddler so I can spend time with him, and work long days on days I'm child-free. He has made no changes to his schedule. Not the a-hole. If he wants to share custody, he needs to do the work half the time or deal with the consequences like an adult. Can't play weekend dad and expect full credit parenting. Share the kid, share the responsibility, or don't bother. Exactly, but if he's like this, chances are he's only insisting on shared custody to get out of paying child support. Please be careful that you don't screw yourself over with this. Yes, your soon-to-be ex should have consequences for failing to care for your son by not picking him up from daycare during his parenting time. However, you may not be helping yourself on the upcoming custody battle by telling the daycare to go ahead and call CPS. Instead, go pick your son up every single time and document it. Ask the daycare to call your soon-to-be ex before calling you and to keep a record for you of how many times he has to be called because he is late or no shows. Use that documentation of your soon-to-be ex's irresponsibility in making sure your child is cared for to get full custody of your son, limited visitation, and full child support. I'd lose my job if I keep calling out in place of him. How will you manage your work commitments if you get full custody? The current situation is clearly not working and it's negatively impacting your child. Your husband is unlikely to get better, so you need to think of a new plan. I'd use child support for a part-time nanny. I have a stay-at-home mom friend right now, who I pay to get my child if my day runs long. Would be abnormal because the weeks I have him, I only do shorter days. I'm done usually by 2 p.m., but she's there as my part-time nanny to help me out if I run late. Her kids are older,